You're listening to Flip Empire, the show committed to helping real estate entrepreneurs who want to build their empire without sacrificing their life. Your success and freedom starts now with your host, Alex Pardo.
What's going on, guys? You're about to listen to episode 670 with my good friend, Nathan Brooks. Guys, you're in for a treat today because if you don't know Nathan, I have been good friends with him for the last 4, maybe 5 years or so. Nathan is just a great dude, passionate leader, well-respected investor, and somebody who lives in Kansas City. He's just a savvy real estate investor. He's the co-founder and CEO of Turnkey Investments. They're a home builder out in the Kansas City area. They're on the brink of doing about 60 new construction homes in their first year of operation. Prior to doing that, they were one of the top producing turnkey rental providers, added over $45 million in values to their clients' portfolio. And then he's also a regular contributor on Bigger Pockets. In fact, Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets, formerly from Bigger Pockets, wrote the foreword to his new book, which is coming out in January, The No Quitter's Guide to Investing in Real Estate. So on today's podcast episode, we're actually going to get caught up from when we last spoke to Nathan on episode 230 about scaling up. And why for him that just wasn't a fit. It didn't fit his vision. So we're going to talk about growing and getting bigger and better, and just that mindset that is so pervasive in our culture of real estate investors, and so much more we're going to get into. So really encourage you to listen to this. We have a very vulnerable conversation about a lot of different things that I think are going to stir up some emotions and possibly some questions inside of you. So with that said, I want to introduce you to my good friend, Nathan Brooks. Welcome, my friends. This is the first time joining. I think you've chosen an amazing episode to tune into here on the Flip Empire Show. My name's Alex Pardo. I've been hosting this podcast for about 6.5 years now. And I continue to host this podcast selfishly because I get an opportunity to connect with great friends like my next guest here, Mr. Nathan Brooks. And I get to learn just alongside you. Selfishly, I do this because I want to give, but I also learn a lot from being on this podcast. And honestly, I feel like when I connect with guys like Nathan, I level up myself. So just to give you guys a little bit of background and context, I believe we had Nathan on for episode 230. This is episode 670. So that must have been 3 to 4 years ago. And we'll link that episode up in the show notes, but we talked about scaling up versus scaling down. We talked about how Nathan built his rental portfolio. And he's just got a great business. He's multifaceted, is involved in a lot of different things, and has evolved a lot over the last 3-4 years. So we're going to kind of get an update from Nathan as to what life looks like today, what business looks like. He recently authored a book that you guys can get at noquittersguide.com. We'll talk about the book. We'll talk about how it's going to help you as a reader. And I honestly feel like you guys are going to be leveled up just by listening to Nathan speak. He's a great dude. We spent some time together over sushi in South Beach, probably around 3 years ago or so. We were both at an IMN single family rental conference. Just a great dude. Really encourage you guys to get to know him. And hopefully this episode, if you didn't listen to 230, is the start of that. So my man, with that, it's awesome to have you back on for round 2.
Alex, what a pleasure, man. I'm so happy to be here with you. And I was thinking about that Miami, that sushi night. That was an epic evening.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun, dude. That was a lot of fun. So yeah, man, I guess why don't we start here for the people that hadn't had an opportunity to listen to 230, and hopefully they will after this one. Just a super quick, because I already touched on it in the intro, just a super quick, 1 to 2 minute background on you. And I'm curious, dude, what your business looks like today, like how things have grown and evolved over the last several years.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a Kansas City-based investor, real estate investor, and have really been focused on scaling a business. We were doing 100, 150 flips a year. We did about 700 over the course of 5 or 6 years. And to be honest with you, Alex, got a little burned out, man, flipping that many houses. And, not that flipping houses is bad, and everybody has their own philosophy and own things. And, so I'll say over the last year, 18 months, I've really been inspired to find ways to use that 80-20 principle in my own business with our own team with our own skills. And so, for instance, we've been focused on doing less deals with higher margins. We've been focused on, bringing our team size down smaller because, for a long time, I really was fired up about having this big team. And honestly, I much more enjoy having the smaller team as I've kind of worked my way through that and had it. And then, we've really gotten into some development stuff too. So we just put together our first development deal in Texas. So yes, I'm based in KC. We also operate in Texas, and, had our first 7-figure exit on a deal.
Wow.
In one deal. Yeah. So, it's like, man, so things have changed quite a bit, I would say, since last time we talked.
I bet. So there's a lot to unpack there. I definitely want to hear more about this development deal in Texas and the 7-figure exit and all that. But I can relate to a lot of what you're sharing here. And I think there's a lot of people that listen to the show that are in growth. And I don't want to demonize that at all. I think that's great if you're doing it for the right reasons. But you've been there, done that. You got the t-shirt with it, right? So talk specifically to the people that have that mindset where they want to grow and scale, and how to do it responsibly, because you talked about getting burned out. So I'd love to hear, in your opinion, how do you grow and scale and build a big team responsibly and do it in a way to hopefully avoid that burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that that's a two-part. It's how do you do it responsibly, but also how do you approach that, and from wherever you are in your journey of investing, and have thoughtful decisions and choices around what you want it to look like. And so one of the things for me was like, hey, bigger is better, grow. And I just had this realization one day that was not really true for me anymore. But I think for people who are thinking about growing and scaling, the numbers, I think it's easy to get sucked into the numbers game of like, I flipped X number of houses. And of course I talked about that, right? But really thinking about, at the end of the day, a couple things. First of all, like, what's my profitability per team member? Like, so as I'm scaling with people, what am I doing financially within the company? Number two is, what do I really actually want it to look like? So not that it's just bigger number, like, what does it actually produce? Dollars, time, opportunity, and what are you giving up to build this giant company?
Yeah.
In the spirit of that. And then third, I would say, what do you enjoy doing in your own seat, holding your own responsibility, and that we don't take on things that we end up being upset about or regretting, or, feeling frustrated because you created it, right?
Right. Yeah. Man, I know for me, you and I met at a mastermind with some of the high level, some of the best investors in the country. And I gained so much from being a part of that community. But one of the things that I also learned from, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I don't know if this was true for you, but for me, I started to go down that path of trying to scale and grow, and bigger is better, because I saw other people doing it. And I thought to myself, well, that's the path to go. Bigger is better. And if they can do it, I can certainly do it. And similar to you, dude, a year and a half into this process, I was less fulfilled. I was less happy. I wasn't making as much money. I was generating more revenue, but I wasn't making as much money. And I find that a lot of people kind of succumb to that trap, where they get in these environments and they see people doing all these things, but they don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and they make important life and business decisions based on what they see others do. And I've seen people, I've had people on my podcast that say, hey man, I had to unplug from all these different Facebook groups and unfriend people, because I found myself making decisions based on what I saw on just the surface, but I didn't have the level of understanding. I don't know what was really going on behind the scenes. For you, were you influenced by your environment? And I don't mean in a negative way, but like, did you say bigger is better because you saw other people doing it?
Well, first of all, I think exactly what you said is true. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in what other people are doing and what's on Instagram or what's on Facebook or whatever. And, we just we all of a sudden we're like, oh gosh, this guy's or this girl's doing this, and we can play that, looking at other people through this lens that doesn't give us a real picture. So yes, that certainly happened. I would also say that for me, I just was like, let's go, let's keep going. But it was almost like that unfettered. It's like riding a racehorse, but not really. Like you get out of the circle of the race and you're not sure where you're headed. And I think, in some regards, when I think back, the number of deals we did and the number of houses we flipped and all that stuff, I would have done it differently. But that's part of the lesson of looking back and saying, I'm not looking back with regret, but I'm looking back with grace to myself of whatever mistakes I made, and also the opportunity lens, which says, okay, great. Well, what is the lesson from this, and how can I move forward in a way that is more fulfilling and better for me, my family, my business, and all that.
Yeah, dude, there's so much wisdom packed in what you just said. It's the fact that you're able to have the awareness to look back and saying, hey, this is a part of my journey. This shaped me. And without those experiences, I wouldn't have learned. I wouldn't have been able to be in a position to now have authored a book. And, again, you just talked about a 7-figure exit. Before I transition to kind of the next phase and where you're at now, you mentioned something that, if I'm listening to this podcast episode and I'm thinking of growing and doing a bunch of flips or building a rental portfolio or doing more wholesale deals, you said something in the middle of that. You said, I would have done it differently. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to dig in on that particular question a little bit more. How would you have done it differently? And I want to address the people that are out there that are looking to grow and do more.
Yep. And I don't say it with regret, but I say it with like the 2020 vision of looking back. And, there's two parts. Number one, I would have grown more slowly. So we really went fast. And like you mentioned, we were doing more top line revenue. We were doing 25, 30 million, in top line revenue, maybe even more. One of the years, but the margins were compressed as we did more deals. So it wasn't financially beneficial, and it was much more stressful, frankly. The second piece is I would have held way more of the houses. I think about, keeping, 350 houses, 400 houses over the period of 2015 to now, it just kind of makes me sick. So, that's one of those things where you're like, all right, well, I didn't do that, so I'm not going to beat myself up about it. But, anybody that I talk to, I say, hey, and even now, when I talk about any business with any partner anywhere, it's like, listen, I'm holding everything other than what we need to, cover the bottom line.
That's right.
And that's it, because that's the wealth game. And so I've been way more focused on that. And how do we continue to retain assets or businesses that cash flow and operate in a totally different way.
What's interesting that I just thought of now, Nathan, rarely do I ever hear of somebody come on here, or when I'm out in an event or a mastermind or speaking or something, very rarely do I hear somebody come up to me and say, dude, I held on to this property. I wish I would have flipped it. Yeah. But almost always I hear exactly what you just said. Like I would have held on to way more assets. And I've said this before, but every now and then just to see how I've grown, I look back at emails that I sent out in 2008, 9, 10 of wholesale properties. And then I look at the prices today and I'm like, wow. But to your point, that served me at that point. I was able to make that 10, 15, 20 grand, and that helped. You know what I mean? So like, I don't look at it. I love what you said, the distinction between looking at it with regret versus looking at it with grace. And hey, that's part of my journey. There's a lesson learned there. So I think that's really, really wise. So man, with that being said, I want to dive into the book and learn more about it. No Quitter's Guide. So take me back to when this was even a thought that you wanted to author a book, and what was the reason behind you wanting to do so?
Yeah, well, for multiple years, I've been pondering, and I'm in probably about a little over a year into the journey of like physically writing the book too. So it's probably been 3 or 4 years, and I'd gone back and forth because I'd written a lot for Bigger Pockets on their I've been on their podcast a number of times, and I'd written for their blog, probably I don't know, 100 articles or something like that. So I've been writing a while, and I came to a place where I was feeling this pull to write a book and talk about how I believe the way that a lot of real estate is presented in the market right now is it's just wrong. And it bothers me. And I wanted to find, so that was one. And number two was to help people not just be inspired. So, how many of us got into Rich Dad Poor Dad? You're into real estate from Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
I know me.
Me too.
It's like anybody of our age, range, it seems like that's such a common theme. And, but I when I go back to Rich Dad Poor Dad and I read it now, I feel like there were some things that were missing. So like, what do I actually do? Like, what's a little real estate 101 that actually helps talk me through what that actually means? And then how do I set vision, which is kind of what we just talked about? Like, how do I set vision so I have the best chance of creating that from the beginning, or at least with more clarity or more questions that project me into a path that serves me and serves that extraordinary life that I, which is in the title. So that was my like inception story, or the nucleus of the desire to write that book.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. Just to be totally transparent, I haven't had the opportunity to grab a copy yet, but I am looking forward to reading it. And you're speaking my language, dude, when you use the word vision, because I find that so many people set out to build a business, big or small, but they spend so much of their time and energy on the X's and O's of building a business, and they forget to live life. And things sacrifice, whether it's health, relationships, and the time in those relationships. I mean, to me, that's the juice of life. Like, that's what really matters. The quality of our relationship. I think Tony Robbins, it impacts our life, or something along those lines. Are there any, because again, I haven't had an opportunity to read the book, but I will. Are there stories, case studies? How did you decide to structure the book to best help the reader?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm waiting for the first physical copies to show up. So what I have right now is the hand printed with all of the details and stuff that were in it. But from a layout standpoint, it kind of sets it up as far as, chapter one, if only I could change my life. So how many times have we sat down with an investor that says like, man, if I could just quit my job, or if I could just, so it's like right back into it where someone's really actually coming from. And if you haven't started yet, or you have a business, but it's not doing what you want it to do, so then, talking about, hey, are you doing something that you love, and how do you like assess that? And then real estate done wrong. So I have a whole chapter about whether it's, the way that we look at ourselves, or we want to pose in front of a Lamborghini or whatever. It's like, what actually matters, and what are we actually creating? And then mindset, real estate done right. So I have a story about somebody who worked for me actually at the time, who on a Saturday in like 30 minutes, we figured out she could pay off her house from the real estate she owned.
Wow.
And 30 days later, she paid it off. So anyway, it goes on. Real estate 101, vision creating, diagnostics, creating a plan, executing a plan, and then, living an extraordinary life. So that's kind of the layout of, where you are, what's going on, done right, done wrong, at least in my opinion, and so forth.
Very cool. Is the reader that you had in mind when you sat down to write this book, is it for the person that's looking to get started in real estate? Is it for the person that's already in real estate? Like, who specifically is it for?
I think it's for somebody who's seeking to live an extraordinary life, live life purposefully, doing cool stuff. Like, forever presses on the ways of, how do I best do this? Like, how do I get the most out of life? And so I think it's geared starting for someone who doesn't have real estate experience, just to help in that way, because it's using the vehicle of real estate. But I think it's broad enough to help someone who is in any place that really wants to not only do real estate, but also is thoughtful on the way that they're living their life.
Dude, the great thing is that that's every single person that listens to this show. And really any person that just listens to podcasts or watches YouTubes or understands the value of personal development and growth, that's always the best investment you can make. And so even though I haven't had an opportunity to read the book yet, I know Nathan pretty well. And I know he's a man of character and integrity, and he's got a lot of knowledge and experience. So highly endorse and encourage you guys to go check out the book. NoQuittersGuide.com is where they can grab it. Nathan, you mentioned something a couple of minutes ago, and you kind of piqued my interest. I'm curious to learn more about it. You talked, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something along the lines of you looked out there and you didn't like the way what you saw as far as how real estate was being taught, or something along those lines. Elaborate on that. What was it that didn't resonate with you? What was it that you wanted to change through this book?
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great question. So there's a couple things. Number one was the perception of like the average real estate investor, which was, like showing pictures of dollar bills and standing in front of the fancy car and, showing off watches, bling, 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 look at my 1 million people on social media. And none of those things are inherently wrong. And I own a nice watch. I own a nice car. I don't find a need to, I bought those things because I was really excited about them, and I love driving my car, and I think watches are interesting, and I like the movements of them and whatever. And it's not a bad investment either, really. But
I love watches, dude. So that's a whole separate conversation you and I can have.
Yeah, we could totally do that. And I don't care, right? I don't care what people buy. It's not my choice, and that's not my mission. But my mission is to say, for people who are out there and who are, inspiring people to get into real estate and to change the game. I think back to like the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week. I have this book sitting right here, which, is also a game changer. Awesome book. And, he talks about in there, like, you want a fancy car. Well, you don't have to write a $150,000 check. If you want to lease it for a year because it's fun, you can, spend a fraction of that. And, rather than just being this grow, 10x, 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 how about, what do you want it to look like?
Yeah.
Like, and what's the minimum effective dose to use that 80-20 to build something that you're really proud of and that actually serves you and your family, your business, and all those things. And I just don't think that's talked about enough. And it drives me absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So
this, dude, if you don't mind, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I think it's so timely what you're saying. I hear you loud and clear, and there's a bigger part of me that feels connected to what you're sharing and how you feel than the flip side. But just to play devil's advocate, just recently, Ryan Pineda, who I think is a mutual friend of ours, I saw one of his videos, and he was talking about his experience meeting Grant Cardone and having a conversation with him. And Ryan was essentially sharing on the video what you and I are talking about now, that like, I've never been one to be super flashy and to show the lifestyle and, riding on a private plane or the cars or the watches and all that. And he said he walked away from the time he had with Cardone feeling differently, and that Cardone's message was attention is the new currency. Right. And attention is what gets people to pay attention so that then you can help them. And I'm paraphrasing, but so what Ryan was sharing in the video is that Cardone, during COVID, there was a couple of months where he just stopped posting about the lifestyle, and he noticed his engagement just completely drop. And then he told his team, hey, let's start posting more and let's start showing more of the lifestyle and all that. Engagement went up, revenue went up, and bottom line is he feels like he was able to help more people as a result of that. I don't know if there's a right or wrong, right? I think the only wrong is if you're not being yourself and it feels inauthentic. But where do you land on that? And again, I'm not posing the question to combat what you're saying, but more just to have a dialogue, because I see both sides of it.
100%. I see both sides. Ryan Pineda is a stud, runs a great business. I'm not a big Grant Cardone fan, to be honest, so that probably clouds that feeling around it. But and I also remember during the COVID times, I'm pretty sure it was him who posted something about not paying out his investors and like burning it down. So there's that component. But I will say, when when I have a feeling about something or someone that doesn't land right for me, that's when it's like, all right, this something feels inauthentic. And so in that way, it feels inauthentic to me. Like, well, you're not raising billions of dollars of money to put into these deals, but is it really about helping people, or is it really about having attention? And, I think there is something to be said for when you think about the culture now, and, Kylie Jenner can have $1 billion company and have a bajillion, Instagram followers, but is that really inspiring people? Or are they really more like, gosh, I can't believe she's so good looking, or gosh, I can't believe she has $1 billion company. Yeah. And it's not really serving the same way as saying, Alex, how do we help you create that? And how do we inspire you to have that space in your life that you really are enjoying, and the most that we can, right? Everybody has stuff that goes on, personal, business, family, but I think there's a divergent culture right now in real estate and maybe in business in general, that everybody wants those eyeballs. But we also know, like, gosh, my son's 11, almost 12, and he still doesn't have a cell phone and is not on social media, because we know over and over and over that people say, this is not good for kids. And it's probably not good for adults either in a lot of ways. And so how can we build something on not just trying to get like eyeballs of people, but we really truly inspire them to have something change in their own life?
Yeah. No, man, I think it's a fascinating conversation. And my invitation to those of you listening or maybe watching this somewhere online is to really explore that and ask yourself, when you see these things, what's the emotion inside of you that's triggered? Is it, do you feel inspired and motivated, or do you feel a sense of jealousy or envy? Those are negative emotions that don't serve us. So you get to kind of play with that. That's my invitation to you guys, is to explore what feelings or emotions are triggered up inside of you. I can tell you personally, there's times, and I'm not a jealous or envious person by nature, there's times where it's almost too much. I get turned off by seeing so many people post wires and checks and talk about the 1,027 unit building they just bought, while, like, generally speaking, I'm inspired and I'm a champion of those people. Like, I want to lift them up, and I'm generally inspired by it. But I think you said something culture, a diversion culture, I think you said, or it's so much right now. It's so in our face. And I think it's important that you ask yourself, are you using social media? Are you using and leveraging some of these tools, or are you letting it use you? Yes. And so anyways, I just think it's an interesting thought audit. It's an interesting thing to have conversations with, your peers and your network. And I'm grateful for you, Nathan, for bringing it up, dude, because it makes me think, are these tools using me to a certain degree? What triggers up inside of me? And I think awareness is one of those things that is just so critical to our happiness and to our success. So yeah, man, I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And I appreciate what you said too. Like, what's the emotion that shows up? Because, all emotions are okay, but they also are a guidepost for us to understand, like, what lane did we just arrive in, and what's going on? Is that kicking us in fight or flight, or we're feeling jealous? And I think that's a beautiful question. I think a mutual friend of ours, Tom Kroll, talks about this too. Is like, have a number. Like, it's not that you can't make more money, but at some point, you don't need any more, or you don't need any more to live a lifestyle that you want. Yeah. And then what can you do with it? Whether it's investing or helping change somebody's life, or, through philanthropy or whatever else. There's a lot of cool ways. And it doesn't mean you can't build a business. It doesn't mean you can't make a bunch of money. It's all good. But it's like, for what? To what end? What is it that we're actually creating this for, and spending all this time for our family, when oftentimes it feels like it's really not about the family, and it's really not about your kid's legacy. It's about you posting another check on Facebook, and, making another thing about your 1,000 unit building or whatever, and drawing attention to yourself. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I think the bottom line here is just be honest with yourself. if you're not going to be honest with others as to why you're doing something. To your point, Nathan, I've been guilty of saying, hey, I'm doing this for my family. But what I've realized over the years is that what my kids want, what my two girls want, is more time with me. They don't want the money that's going to, the money's important. It's a tool. And we're not, hear us loud and clear. We're not saying don't go get that. Don't go get what you want, because it's out there. I think what Nathan and our message is that you can have both. Don't sacrifice your life in the pursuit of money, which you think is going to lead to happiness, because oftentimes that's just not the case, right?
Yes, exactly. And to be also clear, I have multiple friends that post some of these things that I love them and they're amazing people. Yeah. And so it's like part of my heart hurts thinking about that, because, certainly I'm proud of them and their accomplishments. I just think as a culture of business and people who are now like, we are helping inspire a new generation of people to invest and to do real estate. And we can set those conditions. We can set a different playing field of what, feels like a little bit more beautiful of a life, and a little more beautiful of a way to approach the way we express it.
Yeah, man. And I think at the end of the day, the intention is really what drives these things and what matters. And I don't want to come across as a hypocrite, because just a couple of months ago, we decided to sell our storage facility, the first one I got involved with that I closed last year. And I shared it. I posted it on social media. My heart behind that was more celebrating the journey, the fact that I had built this wholesaling business. I decided it was no longer for me. I burned it down and I focused on a different asset class. And so it was just more celebrating the fact that I had done that. It wasn't to like beat my chest and say, look how great I am. So hopefully Nathan and I are not sounding like hypocrites, because we've all done it. We've all shared, but I think just be aware of your true intentions. Are you doing it to feed the ego, or are you doing it because you generally want to celebrate or inspire someone, or maybe because it draws opportunities and it draws people into your, whatever the case is, just be clear on why you're doing it. I think is the bottom line that we're trying to share here. So
I agree. And I agree with the sentiment you just shared too, on like, not being a hypocrite. I've shared cool things that have happened, for me too. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, at all.
It's what is our intention and what is the volume of stuff too. And what is it that the purpose of those conversations are for?
Yeah. No, exactly right, man. So, guys, the book, highly encourage you guys to pick it up, noquittersguide.com. Nathan, anything that you think when people pick it up and read it, anything you think is going to surprise them about the book, or something that you think might jump out or resonate with them?
Well, some of the early feedback I've gotten from it is, and by the way, it publishes on January 10th, and then there's a live book launch party in Kansas City also on January 13th. So people can't actually physically get that copy for a month and a half or whatever. I will have a few copies in my own hands here in probably a couple weeks, which is cool. It's hard to believe yet, but I've heard a lot of people just say, they appreciated the vulnerability of the stories, and pretty much every chapter started with like, all right, well, this is what I screwed up, or this is the challenge I had, or this is going through bankruptcy, or, this is when I felt frustrated with my business. And because in the end of the day, we see all these people all the time, like crushing it or whatever. And it's like, no, everybody has tough days, tough weeks, tough times in their business. And then number two, Brandon Turner, who, was the former co-host of Bigger Pockets podcast, and, has 7 or 8 of the top, 10 real estate books on the internet. Yeah. Or in the United States. He wrote the foreword to my book, and he wrote something to the effect of, if you're getting into real estate, certainly you can go read mine or you can go read other ones. But if you were just to read one book, he's like, this is actually a really great place to start. Wow. Because it moves you through. And so that was his words. I paraphrased, of course, but my goal is literally like, when people say, hey, where do I start? You're like, all right, well, Rich Dad Poor Dad's up there. one of Brandon's books up there, but mine is too, because
that's huge, man.
Yeah. When I get into something like that, I didn't want to write a book that was like a top of funnel lead, because we have plenty of people we know that have written books like that they're not really, didn't go through that process. And I hired a coach I have a publisher. Like, I wanted to do it right and right for me. So that was the goal.
Well, man, I want to publicly acknowledge you, dude. Number one, I'm proud of you, not just because you're a friend, but I haven't authored a book, but I have plenty of friends that have, and I've heard the journey, and it can be a pretty daunting process to many. And the fact that you went all in and you hired a coach and you found a publisher, and for you, it sounds like the intention of this is not just to generate a bunch of leads, like a lead magnet type of thing, but you genuinely want to impact and help people. And I love the fact that you led with your heart, because you used the word vulnerability. And you said, hey, I haven't done 700 plus deals and this is how you could do it. But you said, this is where I've screwed up and this is how you can not follow this path and learn from these lessons that I've had to learn and go through. So yeah, man, those lessons learned, that journey, the fact that you decided to grow and bigger is better, like that all served you, because now you're in a place where you can help others and say, hey, these are the mistakes I made. And you can certainly make them if you choose to, but you don't have to. Right. Sometimes, no matter how, we always have the answers and the resources in front of us, but I think sometimes it takes us banging our head against the wall to say, hey, that's not a good idea.
But unfortunately, that's true. That is so true. But, the other thing about the book, and again, this is not a sales pitch, just literally because my heart in the book was, the goal of seeing so many people. I've talked to so many people at events and masterminds and all that stuff that at the end of the day, like, they don't seem that happy, and making a bunch of money or not inspired, not having fun. And, I've chosen to do my very best to live my life in that way. Like, doing cool stuff, meeting cool people, going to cool places, and just enjoying life and pursuing life in that way. And so if I can help inspire, people to do that, then it's a big win.
Man, that's huge, brother. Again, I'm super proud of you guys. I want to encourage you. And if you've been listening to this show, maybe this one felt a little different, because I can't think of an episode in which I said so many times, hey, go do this, go get this. This podcast was never about promotion. And to this day, it's still not about promotion. It's Nathan and I have a heart for giving. And hopefully a lot of the conversations that we've woven into this podcast get you to think and get you to ask yourself certain questions behind your intention. Are you being authentic? But I think I have such a small library behind me, but I have a library throughout this entire house. I'm constantly wanting to feed myself, because just one sentence, one word that triggers a thought, or an idea, which gets me to act, it can completely change your life. And I know Nathan and I know his heart, so I'm comfortable standing behind saying, hey, go get this book, read this book. I know you won't be disappointed. Dude, with that being said, anything else that you want to share to kind of, as we start to wrap up the episode? You've been a real estate investor now for how many years?
10 plus, probably 14, 15 years at this point.
14, 15 years. So you did experience the 2008, if that's the case. Anything you want to end the show with as it relates to kind of the environment we're in right now? It seems like no matter where I go, the topic is around the market is shifting. It's harder to get, inventory off the books as far as flips are concerned. Rates are high. What's going to happen in 2023? Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, but just what's your general sentiment?
Yeah, well, that is an excellent point, and that is the conversation I'm hearing, we're having, right? And so for me, I have had a lot of conversations around what, if I look back to the 2008, 9, 10 time, what would I have done with having the lens of experience? And I would have battened down the hatches. I would have gotten as small and lean as possible. And I would have bought everything that was a good deal and held it, and only buy and flip the best properties in the best areas with the best margins. And so that's what I'm working on, is doing the high yield deal opportunities. And we've been adding luxury Airbnbs as a part of our portfolio too. So we've added a bunch, and just buying assets that I'm like, cool, I'll hold that for 20 years. No problem. And so, I think, and listen, I have also had moments where it's like, I want to pull my non-existent hair out of my head and, and like, what in the world is going on? So I'm not acting like, I haven't had my own frustration with this market or lost money on deals, because I have, and it's been a weird time to navigate. But this is when we come back to those things that are most important to us. We take a deep breath, we get out of fight or flight mode, put on a podcast, go for a run, get a workout, go do some jujitsu, and get in the woods and get your mind right and come back and get after it.
Yeah, dude. Well, man, I remember as we end the show here, I remember we were having sushi in South Beach years ago, and you were sharing with me how you were training for your first amateur mixed martial arts fight. And you successfully did that. You went out there and you fought your heart out. And then, now here you are years later, you've repositioned your company. You've authored a book that I think is going to help a lot of people. So yeah, man, just really grateful to call you a friend. And I'm glad you came on here. And for those of you listening, start to think about life as cliche as it sounds. It's so short. You just never know. Nathan and I, we saw each other 3 weeks ago. We were at a friend's, someone passed away and close to her family, a funeral. And it really gets you thinking about what's important. So a lot of Nathan's message in the book and what he shared on the podcast, hopefully really gets you to think about, what's your purpose for being here, right? I recently read, how on social media, it pops up quotes from that you did like a year ago or posts from a year ago. And I think, and I'm certainly not smart enough to come up with this, but I read it somewhere and it said, your willpower will fuel your why power. Your willpower will be fueled by your why power, I think is the basic message. So what's your why, right? Like, what's your purpose for being here? Are you living life to make more money and to grow bigger and better and badder? Or what's the ultimate reason for, So anyway, hopefully this podcast serves to just like stir up some thoughts and emotions inside of you. But my dude, I'm excited to get my hands on the book, and thanks again for hopping on here.
Alex, what a pleasure, man. I love this conversation. You're a beautiful human being, and awesome dad, awesome man, awesome investor. And for people who are just tuning in or just getting to know you, you are the real deal. And I'm really grateful to call you friend and grateful to be on here with you.
Thank you so much, my man. Guys, you can grab the book, noquittersguide.com. And with that being said, make sure that you're subscribed so that you get notified every Monday morning when shows come on. This is episode, I believe it's 670, and I have no plans on slowing down. So hopefully
amazing.
You can make the Flip Empire Show part of your every week podcast rotation. So with that said, have an amazing day, guys. Take care. All right, my friend, I hope you enjoyed that Flip Empire episode and got a lot of value out of it. Make sure to check the show notes page for any resources that were mentioned. And speaking of resources, honestly, I don't think I've done the best job of sharing with you my top curated, highly recommended tools and resources that I use in my business or have used in my business. In some cases, these are affiliate relationships with people that I highly trust and respect. And I know these tools and resources can help you and your business go to the next level. And as an ethical bribe, if you decide to try out one of these resources using my link, I will go ahead and send you an unadvertised bonus. I'll send you something of high value. All you got to do is shoot me an email, alex@flipempire.com. Go ahead and let me know that you that you tried out this resource, and however I can help you getting started with that. Chances are that I know it very, very well and currently use it or have used it. So make sure to check that out, flipempire.com/resources. And if I can be of help or service to you in any way, just shoot me an email, alex@flipempire.com, and I will do anything I can for you. Have an amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next show.